Welcome to the World of Hypnosis. My name is Dr. Eric Willmarth, and over the past number of years I've had the privilege of meeting and interviewing some of the most gifted men and women in the world of research and clinical hypnosis. Each of these individuals has shared their own understanding of hypnosis, along with favorite stories and their predictions for the future of the field. This video is a brief sample of the interviews gathered at meetings of the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis, the Society for Clinical and Experimental Hypnosis, the International Society of Hypnosis, and Division 30 of the American Psychological Association. I hope you'll enjoy this quick sample of the world of hypnosis.
And I said, hypnosis is for the birds. That kind of thing we are not going to do.
Just kind of fell in love with the people more so than the topic, I think, at first. Thought that the hypnosis community, particularly those at the time affiliated with SESH and Division 30, I haven't been real active in ASH, but was very impressed by the caliber of the individuals, and my interest in the topic certainly grew as well along the way.
I think hypnosis will remain viable as long as there's a sturdy research component. If there isn't, I think it will go the way of phrenology.
You know, hypnosis is something I think I understand for about half an hour, maybe twice a year. I never cease to be amused by the theoreticians' arguments that one model is able to explain the phenomena to a satisfactory degree. I think that all the models that are currently available and some that are as yet unimagined probably have a piece of the picture. In other words, I don't think we know what we're doing.
Well, the Mother Foundation is an organization my wife and I set up a few years back. And this generated from the time when I was a medical student. I was very indigent and very needy. I had an uncle who was quite well off in Chicago who helped subsidize me and my wife at that time, because I was married and a medical student. And eventually, after I finished my residency and went into practice, I paid back my debt to him. I wanted to pay him interest on the money that he loaned me, and he said, no, don't do that, just be a good doctor. And it's you can't repay somebody for something like this, so we figured that we should do this, repay him by helping others. I set up a loan foundation at the medical school in his name, and later on my wife and I set up the Mother Foundation for the American Society and the Florida Society, where we subsidize students who are also needy to help them get through specific training. And we feel very privileged for doing this, and it's just our small way of saying thank you.
And I packed up my slides and I was walking out behind two surgeons and overheard one of them say to the other, he said, that son of a bitch almost made me believe that. So we still have some skepticism, but we're beginning now. Seattle, different burn units. I personally believe that we'll see the day when a burn unit is considered understaffed if it doesn't have someone who's competent in hypnosis.
It's certainly the case with hypnosis, you can. But the majority of the general public think that hypnosis is a bit weird and wonderful, and it doesn't do any good if the harder-nosed research fraternity are busy saying, no, there's nothing there, there's nothing in it, when they can see that they just turn up yellow pages and there's hundreds of people offering their services using it. What we want is the scientific fraternity to embrace it and say, yes, of course there's something in it, Don't be worried about it. It's safe if properly handled. This is how it's working. Come and use it. Make use of it. As we've been hearing at the conference, there are good uses for it.
I think hypnosis really is a process as opposed to an outcome. And what I mean by that is that in the therapeutic relationship, being a psychologist, that's certainly my understanding, is that the hypnotic experience really comes out of the therapeutic relationship. And I believe hypnosis is something that everybody is capable of and becomes evoked within the boundaries of the relationship.
Hypnosis is a state in which two people can share a focused concentration in which both mind and body seem to come together. I think words are very powerful in how they influence brain function, and I think brain function and its abnormalities affect the words we use and who we are. And in the hypnotic relationship, where you're not focused on just one, as in internal medicine, say, or two, as in just doing psychotherapy, you bring these together. And for me, hypnosis allows the integration of all these aspects in the service of healing.
I can tell you what my personal experience and my personal belief is about hypnosis, which is a deeper contact with yourself. And in that sense, I would say that is a deeper contact, or a contact with your soul. So it's just, we are busy all the time having and should do things and must do things and having to do things. But I think that hypnosis gives you that quiet time just to focus on what you or who you really are in your essence, in your mission here.
The role of self-regulation in general, or the role of our own ability to change our perceptions and to control our emotions and so on, are interwoven with our ability to attend to certain things, whether external or internal. And the whole field of attention, which has been around for more than 100 years and is one of the mainstreams of psychology, has only in recent times gotten the attention that it needed. So the field of attention is getting attention now. And part of the reason it's getting attention, I think, is the same reason that hypnosis is and is going to get attention. That's we are beginning to understand and unravel the physiological underpinnings, or the biological, the neurobiological underpinnings of what is happening there, and how people pay attention, and what they pay attention to, and what the system is capable of doing, what the system is not capable of doing. These kind of issues have implications not just to perceptual avenues and to either vision or auditory or whatever it is, but it's actually extremely helpful in understanding self-regulation in terms of cognitive control, in terms of inhibition, and mostly also in terms of understanding what is happening across development.
Yes, I can. I had been working in Kenya for 3.5 years, and when I got back to West Vancouver, I spent one night a week in the emergency room to put bread on the table while my practice was growing. And I became very concerned about how we treated children in the emergency room. In those days, we used to take them in, take them away from their parents, bundle them so that they couldn't move. The nurses, of course, in full regalia, masks, all strange smells, bright lights, put them on a hard table and tell them not to cry, and of course they howled their heads off. And I thought this was cruel, and there must be some better way to manage it. So over my desk, by serendipity, which I thoroughly believe in, came a brochure from the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis, and they were giving a workshop in Vancouver, and on the agenda, Franz Baumann was talking about hypnosis with children. And I thought, well, I'm going to go and see if maybe there's something here that might be helpful for the kids in the emergency room. And that's how it all started.
How I was first introduced to hypnosis was as an undergraduate at University of Michigan. I was taking some advanced courses. I was in a very fortunate position as an undergraduate. I was allowed to take some of the graduate classes, and one of the classes was a seminar in hypnosis, which I had obviously heard of before, had heard stories about before, but I had never seen anybody use hypnosis for any clinical reason. And this seminar was all about clinical applications of hypnosis. It was considered an odd course at the university because much of the program was heavily psychoanalytic, and the fact that Freud had abandoned hypnosis somehow echoed throughout the department that hypnosis was to be essentially considered the bastard child of psychology.
I found myself always looking for women in hypnosis because my experience early on was that the men were very authoritarian in their style, and I found it jolting. It was very uncomfortable in terms of my style of work. Another mentor was Bernice Sachs, and Karen Olness was certainly, and Marlene Hunter. So the vast majority of them were women. I learned a tremendous amount from Dabney Ewan, Corey Hammond. We have so many virtuosos within our organization. But the women stand out as having been significant in terms of providing some important models.
Boy, I've seen different theories come and go. Some due to empirical work, some due to just they fell out of disfavor. I think that's good for the field that we're constantly evolving and trying to refine our definition of hypnosis. I hope that one day we will have a consensual definition of hypnosis, but I don't think that day is very near, but at least I see more people working toward that end. And my hope is that there will be greater congeniality among the different, I don't want to say sects, I'll call them cults, of the hypnotic movements.
Helen was always playing jokes sometimes on me and getting me into a difficult situation. One time we were in Hawaii, I think, and they had a Fiji who was dancing the very violent type of hula up there. So the dancer wanted somebody to come up on the stage and dance with her. Helen motioned her over and pointed to me, you know, and then when I got dragged up on the stage with this girl, Helen was just roaring her head off, and all the friends were too. So we had amusing things that happened like that all the time.
Actually, my first introduction to hypnosis was when I was about 12 or 13 years old, and a podiatrist in our neighborhood who used hypnosis particularly for small surgeries for anesthesia, and went to our church. A bunch of us fellows found out that he used hypnosis, and we sort of unmercifully bugged him until he went ahead and hypnotized us. And so actually my introduction to hypnosis was at around age 12 or 13. At that point I learned a very rudimentary form of self-hypnosis, but really did not start doing a great deal with hypnosis until the late 1970s.
I prefer to think of hypnosis in terms of a process rather in terms of a state. And a process is a very complex thing. Even consciousness is a process. It is easier for us to say what is a pathological comatose state, but not what is consciousness. The same may apply to hypnosis.
Hypnosis is one of those things, I for sure know it when I see it, but I don't know if I can tell you precisely what it is. The way I think about a definition of hypnosis is that it's not exactly just one thing. It's a complex phenomenon. But I think, from my view, I define hypnosis as an altered state of consciousness characterized by an increased ability to respond to suggestion with a sense of involuntariness. So for me, I believe in the concept of hypnotizability. I believe that a person who is able to respond to hypnotic suggestion, it's with a sense of allowing it to happen, a sense of involuntariness, an effortless kind of responding. And I believe that's part of what we mean when we talk about the trance state, that it's kind of a therapeutic dissociation is how I think of the concept of trance.
My introduction to hypnosis is probably unusual. It's in the literature from the Central Intelligence Agency on brainwashing and mind control, where I read the experiments on hypnosis that were conducted from the 40s through the 60s. The experience of watching hypnosis being abused, and indeed all of the techniques of psychology being abused, made me feel quite unbalanced, and so I enrolled in a counseling psychology program to get a degree and learned the positive benefits of hypnosis. So I came to hypnosis from the dark side.
That time that I said to myself, someday I'm going to give up killing people and instead I'm going to work on getting people well. And I felt that this methodology that I'd seen this used on this man, hypnosis, had a place in my life, and so that's the first time that I ever saw it used.
Hypnosis is an exquisitely amplified and laser-like form of communication, the language of it, which is very important to me. It's a process that helps facilitate conscious and unconscious dissociation. It's a state, it's a trait, and I think it's both those things overlapped. And I get a sense that hypnosis is to trance as the holiday is to the vehicle.
As I mentioned, Erica sent me to this, my first workshop, and I was talking to the chair of the department at University of Chicago about what we did, and they said, well, yeah, pretty soon, they had us relaxing and going into trance, and every one of us was up on the table barking like dogs and quacking like ducks. And the professor said, oh my gosh, really? In other words, he believed me, and he didn't really have any understanding hypnosis, a major figure at a major university, so it shows you how widespread the illusions and myths about hypnosis really are.
As a physician, clinician, and now doing some research, I think one of the things that I've noticed is that there's now a rigor to both looking at who we do hypnosis with, that is, trying to characterize who responds, who doesn't, how one responds based on characteristics of the individual. And secondly, much greater rigor in terms of psychophysiologically categorizing what is it that goes on with hypnosis. I mean, Spiegel's work and other work in neurophysiology about hypnotic hallucination, hypnotic analgesia, hypnotic anesthesia, negative hallucination work. We are now seeing where in the brain seems to be responsible for these, and where in the brain you can make the greatest changes when you ask people to do things.
It was many years ago. In fact, this month is the 45th anniversary of the first hypnosis presentation I ever attended. But I got